According to example 1, does a property qualify as available for immediate sale if it must be vacated over a period usual and customary for such sales? Yes, customary time requirements for vacating do not disqualify an asset from being available for immediate sale. In example 1, why might a headquarters building not be considered available for immediate sale if it can only be vacated after replacement is available? The sale is contingent on obtaining a replacement, meaning the asset is not available in its present condition. Based on example 2, can a manufacturing facility be classified as held for sale if the entity must first clear a backlog of uncompleted orders? No, it is not available for immediate sale unless the entity intends to sell the facility along with the orders. In example 3, why does a plan to renovate a property to increase its value before a sale prevent classification as held for sale? The property is not available for immediate sale in its present condition due to the planned renovations. According to example 4, do standard legal processes like buyer searches and valuations preclude a property from being classified as held for sale? No, such delays are considered normal and customary for property transactions. For example 5, what is the impact of minor pre-selling activities on an asset's treatment as available for immediate sale? Minor activities usually performed immediately before transfer do not prevent the asset from being treated as available for immediate sale. According to example 5, why is an asset in the course of construction unlikely to be regarded as available for immediate sale? Significant activities must be performed before the asset can be transferred to a buyer. In example 6, why is the highly probable test met despite a pending shareholder vote? The majority of shareholders provided signed irrevocable agreements to vote in favor, making the vote a mere formality. In example 7, why is the sale of an asset to a parent company not considered highly probable at the reporting date? The outcome of the formal vote is uncertain because minority shareholders have legal protection and the parent is barred from voting. Based on example 8, does a delay caused by rectifying environmental damage identified after a firm commitment prevent the one-year classification? No, because the delay is beyond the entity's control and rectification is highly probable, allowing an exception to the one-year rule. According to example 9, can a sale requiring regulatory approval qualify for the one-year exception if the process cannot start until a buyer is found? Yes, provided a firm purchase commitment is highly probable within the first year. In example 10, what action must a company take to maintain held for sale status if market conditions deteriorate and no offers are received? The company must reduce its asking price to a level that is reasonable given the change in market conditions. Based on example 11, how long does an entity typically have to meet all held for sale criteria if it acquires an asset exclusively for disposal? Criteria not met at acquisition must usually be met within a short period, typically 3 months. In example 11, why can a building requiring refurbishing be classified as held for sale at the date of acquisition? The refurbishing is highly probable to be completed within 3 months, meeting the short period exception for newly acquired assets. According to example 12, when should the coal mine's results and cash flows be treated as discontinued operations? In the financial statements for the year ended 31st March, once the decision to abandon the business is made and operations stop. In example 12, how were the coal mine's results presented in the financial statements for 31st March? They were treated as continuing operations. Based on example 13, why is a manufacturing plant ceased due to low demand not treated as an abandoned asset? The plant is maintained in workable condition and is expected to be brought back into use when demand increases. In example 13, what is the accounting consequence of an asset being recovered through continuous use rather than abandonment? The entity must not stop charging depreciation or treat the asset as held for sale. In illustration 1, what is the annual depreciation amount for an asset costing at a rate of? According to illustration 1, how many months of depreciation are charged for an asset classified as held for sale on 1st August year start 1st April? 4 months: April, May, June, and July. In illustration 1, what is the total depreciation recognized in the year of classification for the period up to 31st July? Based on illustration 1, what is the carrying amount of the asset immediately before its measurement under in AS 105 on 1st August? In illustration 1, how much depreciation is charged on the property after it is classified as held for sale on 1st August? No further depreciation is charged from the date of classification. In example 14, what is the initial carrying amount of the property before classification cost, cumulative depreciation? According to example 14, if the FVLCTSs and the carrying amount is on classification, what is the write-down amount? In example 14, where is the initial write-down of recognized? In profit or loss? Based on example 14, if a FVLCTS falls from to by the next reporting date, what additional loss is recognized? According to example 14, what gain is recognized if the property carried at is subsequently sold for zero? In example 15, what is the total remeasurement loss recognized immediately before classification for the disposal group? In example 15, does the initial remeasurement difference represent an impairment loss under in AS 105? No, It reflects routine accounting entries such as revaluation under other applicable in AS. Based on example 15, what is the total impairment loss identified when the group's carrying amount is and FVLCTS is 30,000? In example 15, which asset in the disposal group is the first to be reduced by the impairment loss of 9,000? Goodwill. In example 15, how much of the impairment loss is allocated to goodwill, reducing its carrying amount to 0? According to example 15, what is the remaining impairment loss to be allocated to other assets after reducing goodwill? In example 15, why are inventory and investment in equity instruments excluded from the pro rata allocation of the impairment loss? They are scoped out of the measurement requirements of NAS 105 and are remeasured under their respective standards. In example 15, what is the pro rata basis used to allocate the remaining impairment loss between PPE and the building, their respective carrying amounts, and based on example 15, how much impairment loss is allocated to property, plant, and equipment CA of? Based on example 15, how much impairment loss is allocated to the building CA of? In example 15, what is the final carrying amount of the building after the impairment allocation? According to example 15, if FVLCTS subsequently increases to, what is the maximum allowed reversal of impairment? An amount recognized earlier. In example 15, is the reversal of impairment loss on goodwill permitted? No, reversal of impairment on goodwill is not allowed under AS 36. In example 16, what was the carrying amount of the property before classification cost DEP impairment? In example 16, what is the write-down at classification if CA is and FVLCTS is 5 million? According to example 16, what gain is recognized when the property is sold for 0? Based on the overview chart, what are the two core objectives of AS 105? Measurement and presentation, classification and disclosure. According to the measurement chart, how are non-current assets held for sale measured? At the lower of carrying amount and fair value less costs to sell. Based on the overview chart, what is the presentation requirement for discontinued operations in the statement of profit and loss? The results of discontinued operations must be presented separately. In the scope chart, which standard covers the measurement of deferred tax assets instead of AS 105? In AS 12. In the scope chart, which standard covers the measurement of financial assets instead of AS 105? In AS 109. In the scope chart, which standard covers the measurement of agricultural assets instead of in AS 105, in AS 41. In the scope chart, which standard covers the measurement of employee benefits instead of in AS 105, in AS 19. According to the key requirements chart, what is the time limit for a sale distribution to qualify as highly probable? It should be expected to qualify for recognition as a completed sale within 1 year from classification. Based on the measurement section, what must be done to the carrying amounts of assets in a disposal group before remeasuring the group's FVLCTS assets and liabilities not within the scope of an AS 105 must be remeasured in accordance with their applicable in AS. According to section, how should an entity present an increase in the present value of costs to sell arising from the passage of time as a financing cost in profit or loss? Based on the measurement section, when is an asset acquired in a business combination measured at fair value less costs to sell? When the newly acquired asset meets the criteria to be classified as held for sale at the acquisition date. According to section, to what extent can an entity recognize a gain for a subsequent increase in fair value less costs to sell? Only up to the cumulative impairment loss previously recognized under an AS 105 or an AS 36. Based on section, what happens to interest and other expenses attributable to liabilities in a disposal group held for sale? They shall continue to be recognized. According to section, in what order is an impairment loss allocated to a disposal group? First to reduce goodwill, then to other assets pro rata based on their carrying amounts. Based on the summary chart, can a sale transaction include an exchange of non-current assets? Yes, provided the exchange has commercial substance in accordance with AS 16. According to the summary chart, why are non-current assets to be abandoned not classified as held for sale? Their carrying amount will be recovered principally through continuing use rather than sale. Based on example 15, what is the carrying amount of goodwill after the allocation of the impairment loss? Binbash. According to example 15, what is the carrying amount of inventory after the disposal group is classified as held for sale? In example 15, what is the carrying amount of investments in equity instruments after the disposal group is classified as held for sale? Based on example 15, what is the carrying amount of PPE after allocation of the impairment loss? In illustration 1, what action should entity ABC take regarding the asset on 31st July, immediately before classification? Ensure that asset is measured and depreciated in accordance with AS 16. According to section, if a sale plan involves loss of control of a subsidiary, How should the assets and liabilities be classified? All assets and liabilities of that subsidiary must be classified as held for sale. Based on section, does retaining a non-controlling interest in a former subsidiary prevent held for sale classification? No, classification as held for sale is required regardless of whether a non-controlling interest is retained. According to section, if the held for sale criteria are met after the reporting period but before approval of financial statements, should the asset be classified as held for sale in those statements? No, it should not be classified as held for sale, but specific disclosures must be provided. In the summary chart, what does highly probable mean in the context of an AS 105? Significantly more likely than probable, where probable means more likely than not. Based on the summary chart, what indicates that a distribution to owners is highly probable? Actions to complete the distribution have been initiated, and it is expected to be completed within 1 year. According to the definitions, what is a disposal group? A group of assets to be disposed of together as a group in a single transaction, including directly associated liabilities. Based on the definitions, what is a component of an entity? Operations and cash flows that can be clearly distinguished operationally and for financial reporting purposes from the rest of the entity. According to the definitions, what is the recoverable amount of an asset? The higher of an asset's fair value less costs of disposal and its value in use. Based on the definitions, what are costs to sell? Incremental costs directly attributable to disposal, excluding finance costs and income tax expense. In section, how are assets that are temporarily taken out of use accounted for? They are not treated as abandoned. They continue to be depreciated and are not held for sale. According to example 12, what is the impact of coal mines being treated as discontinued operations on the presentation of cash flows? The results and cash flows of the coal mines must be treated as discontinued operations in the current year's financial statements. Based on illustration 1, why is the asset carried at on 1st August? It is the net book value after subtracting 4 months of current year depreciation. In example 15, what happens if the fair value less costs to sell of the disposal group is higher than the carrying amount? The disposal group is measured at its carrying amount. No impairment is recognized. According to section, when should a gain or loss not previously recognized through remeasurement be recognized? At the date of derecognition of the non-current asset or disposal group. Based on the learning outcomes, what terms must a student be able to define after studying this unit? Non-current asset, disposal group, cash-generating unit, and discontinued operations.